Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'd like to welcome you to today's session. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Lucy Machocho. I'm the Technical Programs Assistant here at African Pharmaceutical Network, and I'll be your moderator for the day. So I see we are at 17 attendees right now, and it's exactly 4:05, so we'll just get started, and then anyone else who plans to join will find us along the way. So before we kick off the session, I'd want to take us through some housekeeping rules that we used throughout the session today. So one thing that you've noted is that your videos and microphones are muted. This is to minimize any disruptions as the session goes on. And also, you are free to turn on your camera should you wish to. We can allow you, but we will have specific Q&A sessions throughout the session for you to ask any questions that you may have. So that time you can raise your hand during that time and we'll be able to unmute you. Meanwhile, I'd like us to make use of the chat to be able to network. Let us know where you're joining us from, your area of practice, who you are. We'd love to connect with you. If possible, share your LinkedIn as well so that you can connect thereafter. And our presenter for today will be Dr. David Ogiambo. I believe you've all met him at some point, and he will be taking us through, first we'll do the introduction to APN, and then our courses in the Pharmacy Academy. So I think without further ado, David, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everyone. I hope you guys can hear me well. Can confirm you can hear me? Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah. So great. It's an opportunity that I was looking forward to just have a conversation with you all to share about the work that we're doing as African Pharmaceutical Network, but most importantly, to talk you through in terms of the work that we're doing, especially on the Pharmacy Academy, that is pharmaceutical workforce development. And that is why we have this information session today to highlight the courses that we are offering, what is in scope for the courses, what is the structure, and most importantly, to answer any questions and any points of clarification that you might all have in whichever it is that you're interested in, which of the courses that you want to do. But also beyond just looking at the courses and what you're keen on learning, it's also an opportunity for you to ask any questions about African Pharmaceutical Network, to know about the organization, and to know how you as an individual can engage, can work with us, and can also champion for the cause that we are championing for as African Pharmaceutical Network to strengthen pharmaceutical systems in Africa. And I hope that is going to be the journey that we are working together. So I'll share my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen. I'll have my slide coming up. Then through the chat, Lucy, please support me by sharing any questions or any concern that might come up in the course of the presentation.
That's all right, David. Your slides
Is my slide up?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. So African Pharmaceutical Networks. So African Pharmaceutical Network is an organization that we established in 2020, the year 2020, that is on the backdrop of COVID-19 at that particular moment in time. And the essence of us coming together was acknowledging that as a continent, Africa, there are gaps in access to healthcare services, and also with those gaps in access to healthcare services, there was need to ensure that whatever intervention, whatever system that are being put in place are going to deliver the sustainable aspirations to ensure there's reliable access to safe, effective, and quality healthcare products and technologies in the continent. And in our perspective, the only way that can be guaranteed is if the professionals, the organizations, and the stakeholders working within the continent are fully engaged and actually meaningfully engaged to deliver on that mission. And the key enablers for that to happen was capacity, so knowledge sharing and capacity building, and that is the core of pharmaceutical workforce development. You need to know what's happening in some different places, get the best practices, and integrate them into your day-to-day practice. So therefore then, if we talk about regulatory affairs, you master the best practices, you are adopting them and you're using them, therefore driving efficiencies and driving reliable access in terms of making products registered in a timely manner. When we look at it from a policy shaping perspective, the pharma industry and the healthcare industry at large is super regulated, but with these regulations, we need to ensure that the policies are safeguarding public health interest. but at the same time, they are not killing innovation or stopping innovation from taking place. So how do we ensure that the policies are responsive to market needs, are responsive to the requirements and needs in practice as a professional, but are still allowing innovation and new practices and new novel ways of doing things to come into place? So how do we engage with regulators, policymakers, but also the industry to gather best practices, integrate them into position papers, and drive these to become policy positions that actually can shape the policy landscape? Beyond that, we work with organizations and we work with companies, whatever it is, and these organizations have to be able to thrive in that ecosystem. The key enabler for that ability is through innovative partnerships, and those partnerships can be in terms of you're supplying a facility with your products. How do we facilitate that partnership? How do we get you the right insights to know what you need to be looking for in that market? And most importantly, how do we facilitate those engagements to deliver that value? And that is our aspiration and our hope as an organization when we started off in 2020. And that is the core of what drives the work we are doing. So those three key pillars will continue being the core of why we're here. So why did we see this as a challenge? All conversations about local pharmaceutical manufacturing in Africa have been there. They still will be there. And I think we have to put something to place. And the reason as why there are limited local manufacturing capacity in the continent has been pointed out. For example, if you take a moment to read the pharmaceutical manufacturing plan for Africa, there are so many of them, some of them linked to the policy incoherence, the inconsistencies, but also capacity shortfalls. And therefore, those are the areas. Can we drive that to happen? Then we have a disjointed pharmaceutical system where each of us in our different domains of practice are working in those domains, but not collaboratively engaging to move the nexus towards a joint effort where we can see somebody working in clinical research, how do they interface with the clinical practice, and how do they collaborate with the pharmaceutical marketer or even the regulatory affairs professional? If we have the practice centers kind of connected and interlinked, we can drive a movement where all these advances are moving towards serving the patient better, creating an enabling working environment for you as a professional, but also moving advances towards the industry so that we have a growing, thriving economical ecosystem. And there wasn't a single platform that was making this happen. So we have professional association, we have industry associations. How can we bring all these people together to move the journey? And those are the key pieces and the key drivers for the work that we are doing as an organization. And our mission, as I already mentioned, reliable access to safe, effective, and quality health products and technology in Africa. And we do it through investments in workforce, business ecosystem support, and policy shaping. And ultimately, that is what we are working towards. What are our key values and what gives us the anchor, actually, foundational piece of why we exist, how we do it? We understand that before you are a professional, before anything else, we're human beings, and humanity is at the core of what we do. We are serving human beings, we are serving each other, we're taking care of each other. How do we make that be a foundational principle behind what we do? And we do it with integrity, with professionalism, client value creation. At the end of the day, if we're offering a training program to you, we ask ourselves, what key information do you need to know to make the right decision, and where are you going to apply that information so that at the end of the day, if 3 months elapses and you've done the regulatory affairs course, you will leave the program with new insights, new perspectives, and you're therefore able to practice at a different level. You might not get into regulatory affairs at all immediately after, but you have the regulatory affairs knowledge and insights to enable you to perform at a different level and different level of professionalism. The same with the pharmacovigilance and patient safety, and the same when we look at it from the supply chain management program that we have. And ultimately, we are working as a team. You have areas where you need support. We are willing to support, and all of us will be there to walk the journey with you. And all our stakeholders will make it as much as possible so that we support one another to deliver on this mission. And that is the foundation behind where we are as an organization. So when you look at the journey, we crystallized our vision in 2020, and I mentioned that. In 2021, we started the industry discussion forums, most of the webinars that we're having, and we had it with a couple of organizations. It's to seed the conversation because we have to know what we envision. We need to know what the future could look like. And then by knowing there, then we move to the next level and ask ourselves, what specific activities can we do to make that a reality? So from those industry discussion forums, we're gathering insights, gathering perspective from different players, but also seeing where the need was in the market, where we could make a substantial impact and a difference. In 2022, we started having the official partnership with some organizations, the Empower School of Health. And I know there are people who actually might be even in the call who have had access to some of the master's course programs, the postgraduate diploma programs to the Empower School of Health. And we finally completed our registration process in Kenya. In 2023, we rolled out our pharmacy academy and we started offering our first course, that is the regulatory affairs course, and also have a couple of other partnerships completed with other organizations. For example, the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, Holistic Drug Design and Discovery, Bloom Public Health, and we're keeping up in terms of strategic partnerships, investing in our training, but also seeing where else can we offer more value. And that came in with accreditations as well. In 2024, last year, we added a couple of other courses but continued our industry discussion forums so that then we can shape practice, we can engage and build collaborations and drive conversations on where we need to be. In terms of the service stream, the core that I'm talking about today will be the pharmaceutical workforce development, but also in a position where we are looking at engaging with stockholders and offering regulatory support services, business ecosystem support, which is more advisory services, and shaping policies. The environment only works when we ensure that the regulations and the framework that are in place are responsive to the needs of the market, but also in touch with the needs in terms of the human healthcare needs. So we safeguard public health interests, but we also support the industry and the business component to work to deliver that mission. So who are the people who help us do this work and who are the people who drive it where it needs to happen? We have an advisory board of 3, John Paul Omolo, who is the board chairperson, Keith Messiah, board member, and McDonald Nose, who is another board member. So we have 3 board members. We have a management team, starting by myself, Dr. Kelvin Odongo, Dr. Esther, Dr. Maisiba Danish, Dr. Noshri Patel. And we have our secretariat, the 3 that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, Dr. Lucy Machocho, she's moderating this session now. We have Juliet Ouma, who is our programs assistant, and Thomas Ogola, who is an IT intern. So that is the constitutive team. And in case you have any concerns, please feel free to reach out to any of us in this particular slide. Ask any questions you might have, seek clarification, point us to any challenge that you're having, and we see where we can support. It doesn't have to be specifically in line with the training, but where there's something that is touching on your professional level and pharmacy practice, we'll be more than glad to support. These are some of the partners that we have, and I think I've mentioned some of them already in the initial slides. So these are some of the partners that we work with. So as a network, how do we work around having membership and all that? So there is individual membership and there's institutional membership. And that is where now the disparity for individual membership, you can come in as a student. For those who are students who are in the network, you have an opportunity to engage with us. And the requirement is you have to either be doing a program, either diploma or degree level, undergraduate, that is, either in pharmaceutical sciences, Bachelor of Pharmacy, or a PharmD, or even biological sciences with interest in pharmaceutical sector. For professionals, you have to have graduated with an undergrad pharmacy or diploma level pharmacy, but you have to have or work within the pharmaceutical research and development area or pharmaceutical industry. So that would be the core of what we're looking at in our work. What are the benefits of you coming on board as a member? You have access to training opportunities for the courses that I'm going to talk about. You do them at discounted rates. You have access to professional networks, and one of the key investments that we are making is to ensure that we build communities of practice. You are a regulatory affairs professional, you are a global health practitioner, you're a public health officer within the pharmaceutical health system strengthening. Can you build a community of practice where you bounce ideas, you shape perspective, and also work collaboratively to see where the industry should go? So that is a key piece investment that we're making in communities of practice. Business consulting opportunities and referrals for some of the work that I mentioned on business advisory. When we engage with clients and they're seeking support, we don't do the work as the secretariat, only as the leadership team. It's about when we have opportunities and projects, we engage our membership to execute on those projects. Can be internal projects, but can also be client-led projects that we have in the network. Then we have thought leadership and industry leadership opportunities. You have opportunities to speak in different forums and topics of interest. You can tell us what particular topic you're interested in, but you can also have topics where we are curating conversations and you have the competencies and the capability to shape those conversations, and we will present that opportunity to you. For those who are working with organizations that I believe could be great members, you can have your institutions join in as members, and in joining as members, then you have a number of capacities. So then as an individual, you can represent your organization So there's African institutional members, but also international institutional members. And the difference is based on their headquarters. So that is the only difference between the two organizations. And the operations have to have some level of operation within the continent. And for organization, the benefits is if you are representing the organization, you have the benefits of a member, individual member, but the organization has additional benefit in terms of market intelligence for emerging regulatory policy and even any business related insights that they might need from us in terms of support, business linkages and partnership for any of their business projects that they are working on, the advisory services, but at discounted rates, strategic policy advocacy, environment shaping, especially when there are changes in policy that might impact the company, and taking a hit and actually following up with the government might be kind of counterintuitive in terms of impacting the business presence, then we can take that responsibility on behalf of the company to lead the advocacy agenda. Then we have thought leadership opportunities as well as the company leaders. So that is an overview of what African Pharmaceutical Network is. And I'll take a pause here for anybody with a question, comment, so that we can share. And Lucy, I'll request you, Juliet, please share the link to membership for those who would be interested to be able to sign up and express interest. But I'll take a pause here to have any questions, for anybody with an interest or any questions to ask.
Thank you, David. The link will be shared in a few. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll be able to unmute you. Alternatively, you can use the chat or Q&A to raise your question there.
Okay. So the membership fee for student members is $25, and individual professional members is $50 per year. 25 for students, 50 for individual. For organizations, it's 2,500 for international dollars and $1,000 for African-based organizations.
Seems there are no questions, David.
Okay, so I think that is okay. So I'll go back to the slide and cover the next piece. Let me know when you can see my screen, bringing it back up.
It's coming up. Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So the Pharmacy Academy, and I've talked about this in terms of the pharmaceutical workforce development piece of work that we are doing. So under the Pharmacy Academy, the key guiding principle is that for us to be able to drive the growth of the pharmaceutical industry in Africa, we need qualified, competent, and meaningfully engaged professionals. You need to have the qualification, you need to have the skills, but you also have to be meaningfully engaged in the industry. And therefore, one key piece around that is to ensure that we're investing in the right professionals so that for the companies that are looking at venturing and investing in the ecosystem, do they have the right talent? And the way I mentioned it, when you look at the pharmaceutical manufacturing plan for Africa, the skills gap was a key impediment and a key barrier. When you look at the Kenya pharmaceutical industry report that was developed in 2021, that is by IQVIA, World Bank, and the Ministry of Health, some of the key pointers were still around the same imperatives and the same concerns. The pharmaceutical vaccine partnership for vaccine manufacturing in Africa, the same pointers as well. So how do we drive that? And in our case, what we noted is there are already people who are practicing in the industry, in the different domains. And therefore, how do we then leverage on that capability and those competencies to build a local talent pool that has the right knowledge, has the skills, but also is in touch with the realities of what practice is in the market to ensure that we drive that. So within the pharmaceutical workforce development, which is anchored within the Pharmacy Academy, which is our institute, we offer the training programs, which is our courses now, regulatory affairs, pharmacovigilance and patient safety, where pharmaceutical supply chain management. And we are currently in the process of developing the pharmaceutical quality assurance, global health pharmacy, digital health and data science in pharmacy, and pharmaceutical management and industrial leadership. So these are additional courses that we are working on to develop and roll out in the coming years as we move on. For organizations, we also offer workshops and industry forums specifically tailored to their customized training needs, but also have these industry discussion forums. And I believe most of you have attended them. Like for last year, we had 15 or so. industry discussion forums. And it's an opportunity to know what's happening in which sector, who is doing what, and how do I shape my career trajectory, or how do I use that information in my professional practice, whether you're doing it from an academic angle, whether you're doing it for your practice, or just being in touch with what's happening in the industry altogether. So that is what we have within the Pharmaceutical Academy. So for the courses I've already mentioned, we have the Regulatory Affairs, Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Management, and Pharmacovigilance and Patient Safety. And all of them are taking 3 months. I'm going to talk about the structure as they are. So the first one is the Regulatory Affairs. This is the faculty, and these are people who are all practicing within the regulatory affairs space. We have Denish Maisiba, Regulatory Affairs Novartis, Regulatory Affairs Specialist is Bea Teresa, myself as well. I transitioned from Novartis though. Then Christopher Dero, who is working with Roche from a policy perspective. So these are professionals, they're training in their personal capacities, but then they are in those domains of work, and therefore they're in touch with what's happening in the industry at any one point in time. And you'd be asking yourself, yes, there's a lot of talk about regulatory affairs. Why should you care about regulatory affairs, and why should you invest in your training as a regulatory affairs professional? One of the key things, and I started off with this, is that other than the military sector, the healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry is the second most regulated industry globally. And the essence of this is that we have to ensure that we safeguard public health interest. We need to ensure that when patients use any medicine, it's not going to cause harm to them. And that is the responsibility of the government. When you look at the social services scope, health is a public need and a social need, and the governments have a responsibility to protect the health and to provide healthcare services to their people globally. So the governments have that responsibility to safeguard it. And the only way they have to do that is to ensure that whatever is being made available to patients is safe, effective, and of the right quality. But on the other end, companies also have a responsibility to their people, because it is through their innovation and through the development of these products that they address healthcare needs. And you don't want to be treating a disease and killing somebody through poisoning and through adverse events. So it is a jointed responsibility where the company or the organization that is developing the products has a responsibility to offer the right quality product, and the government has to ensure that actually the product meets those standards. So that is where the essence of regulatory affairs as a principle came into place. Governments putting in controls, companies meeting their obligation and expectation to deliver quality products across the life cycle value chain. And it's not only in medicines, it covers human medicine, veterinary medicine, medical devices, agrochemical pesticides, cosmetics, and even complementary medicines. And if you look at the scope of what I'm going to talk about in terms of the modules that we cover, there's substantial amount of it. And this includes even in the research and development, where we talk about clinical trials and clinical research. There's a component of regulatory affairs that is involved in ensuring that you're using product that is safe at that clinical trial level, and the regulatory processes in getting it approved across the trial phases have been met. And for a company, it's also a competitive advantage, because that is how they will demonstrate that they're committed to quality, and that is then drives their market valuation and also the ability to perform and sustain their performance as a company. And regulatory affairs is therefore the gateway. If you are going to use a paracetamol tablet today, it has to be registered in the country where you're operating. So without regulatory affairs, there's no business, there's no access. So the gateway to pharmaceutical companies into the different countries is regulatory affairs through the regulatory agencies. And you can be on either side of the continuum, or you can be in the interface where we talk about patient advocacy groups, NGOs, development partners. The key thing is to enable the regulatory systems to meet whatever intended outcomes are. And therefore, when you look at that, the question you should be asking yourself is, what are the domains and what has been the conventional practice of regulatory affairs? When you look at the product life cycle, we start from new drug discovery, clinical research. Then once we develop the product and actually have validated it works in a particular way, we move it into registration. It's registered. Once it's registered, it will be used, and over the use of the product, there will be improvements. Some excipients will be terrible. They need to be eliminated. So improvements need to be made. Maybe there's a change in the manufacturing process. New technologies have come in. That will be the life cycle maintenance. Then finally, once it's in the markets, post-market surveillance, post-market studies, and any improvement that need to be done until to the point where we deregister, remove the product from the market, that it doesn't have any more value. That is the core of clean regulatory affairs as we've been accustomed to, and it's still the domain where most of the regulatory affairs work happens. Clinical research. Are you applying for the clinical trial application, for the ethical approval? Are you ensuring that the product that is being submitted, used for the clinical trial is safe, is effective? All that will fall within the clinical research space. And a regulatory affairs professional, you have a responsibility to satisfy those particular needs. Once the clinical research is satisfactory, you do the new product application, new registrations, from planning to ensuring you make the submission to following up to get registration. Then you move to life cycle maintenance. On an annual basis, some countries will have retentions. On 4 to 5 years, some will have renewal. Every time you make a change, there are variation or post-approval changes that you need to apply for. Then you have post-market surveillance studies. Emerging safety concerns, how are you capturing that? Periodic safety update reports that are captured, how do you submit them? What intervals do you need to submit them? Are there any active studies that you're performing to assess the safety, efficacy, and quality of your product? Those are key core of what has been the conventional. Then you move from there, we go to the next level where we talk about emerging areas and domains of practice where there's work for regulatory affairs professional. And from the guest lecture, you noted that we have Dr. Christopher Odero, who is in regulatory policy and intelligence. Regulatory intelligence is critical because companies have to know which market am I venturing into? What new perspectives are there? How do I make the right decision to get into that market or not? So regulatory intelligence, we have as a critical piece, and people are practicing within that domain where their core role is doing data analytics, policy analysis, regulatory intelligence analysis, synthesis, and presentation to people who need it to make the right decision, and mostly that is companies. Then policy development, regulatory policy, I've already mentioned that when I was talking about policy, but you supported policy development. Either you're working with the development partners, patient support groups, access enablers, and all that. Then we have digital technologies where you can work with an IT company to support in developing the regulatory softwares. And if you've been reading about regulatory affairs, there's a conversation around the ECTDs, electronic common technical documents, and that is where we are now moving towards it. And therefore, governments and regulatory authorities need to have the right technological interface. The person who can support in developing those, whether from a technical guidance perspective, is somebody who understands this is the structure of the dossier, these are the provisions around the regulatory cycle pathway, and this is what I need to do. Those are key areas. Then access policies and principles. You need to support access, and the only way you'll support access is knowing that it has to be registered to be made accessible. So how am I understanding the regulatory pipeline? Are there health technologies assessment when we talk about pricing? Because that is a key barrier. How do you shape them from a regulatory standpoint? So this is becoming a core piece around regulatory practice, but this has been the foundational piece that has been the conventional approach. And therefore you need to see how do we link from here to this new phase. And those are some of the conversations that we're having in our course. So what modules do we cover? We have introduction to regulatory affairs, business fundamentals of regulatory affairs. You practice not only because of the science, but also supporting a business to achieve business objectives. How do you put it to perspective? Then we have RA in biopharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical products, in clinical trials, medical device and in vitro diagnostics, borderline products, that is where we talk about complementary products, cosmetics, herbal products, and nutraceuticals, quality assurance and compliance in regulatory affairs, fundamentals of policy and regulatory intelligence, emerging trends in regulatory affairs with a focus on Africa, then career opportunities in regulatory affairs and how to carve that path if you're looking at practicing within that core domain of regulatory affairs and regulatory sciences. How is our schedule for training? We have weekly lectures every Wednesday from 7:30 p.m. East African time. It's 2 hours, and that is for 3 months. So once a week for 3 months. The core lecture is structured in a sense that we have core lectures, which is every Wednesday. For the number of modules we have, those are 10. Then by the virtue of 3 months having 12 weeks, we have 2 guest lectures, or 1, depending on how we work around the case studies with you. And it will also depend on the topics that you want to be covered. So it's 3 months that covers core lectures, guest lectures, case studies, and a networking dinner. At the end of the year, we'll have a networking dinner for all the cohort members. And the essence of the networking dinner is to bring you together with other people who have taken the course, but also with industry professionals to have conversation and build relationships, because that helps us now further the conversation from a Pan-African network perspective. What is the investment? I mentioned that as a member, you have a discounted rate. So members will pay $250, non-members are paying $300 as their investment, and we have certification at the end of the program. And the certificates, we have CPD accreditation by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and also we are awarded the seal of provision by the International Pharmaceutical Federation, SIP. So that is the overview of the regulatory affairs course. I'll take a pause here in case somebody has a question, comment, so that we can take in before I go to the next two parts.
Thank you, David. Anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand so that I can meet you. Or use the chat to raise the question. This session was meant for you, so please feel free, don't feel restricted to speak up in case you have any concerns or questions there. I don't want to leave anyone behind, so I hope that truly no one has a question.
I think everybody is satisfied.
Yeah, it looks like it. You may continue. Oh, there it goes. So Muiba asks, how often does the regulatory affairs course occur during the year? Has the current started?
Regulatory course occur during the year. Okay, so the current cohort, the first cohort that we're going to have is supposed to be starting actually end of this month. That should be on 29th of January. So the current cohort intake is ongoing. And I think the link, actually, yes, the link has been shared in the chat. So for those who want to register, please enroll for that. And we'll be having 3 cohorts for the year. So this is the first cohort. The second cohort will be coming up in May. Then the last cohort should be coming around July, August. I hope that helps.
Yes, I believe it answered the question. Thank you, David. Leonora asks, I hope I pronounced it right. I missed the cost of the membership fees per year for both individuals and the institutions. So please remind us.
Okay, so for the membership fees, we have the individual student membership, which is 25, professional is 50, institutional member is 1,000, international members is 2,500, and I've sent it in the chat just now.
All right, thank you, David. Any more
Great, thank you.
questions? Right,
Great. I think that's okay. So I can go back to the other two parts, then we can move from there. Hope that's okay, Lucy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see
Can
the
see my
slides.
screen? Fantastic.
Yeah.
So for the pharmacovigilance and patient safety course that we're having, we have a faculty constituted of 3. We have Dr. Kennedy Dokonyero, Pharmacovigilance and Quality Management System Specialist from Uganda, Felix Machache, Pharmacovigilance Specialist and QPPV, and then Nasava Benson, Pharmacovigilance Specialist and QPPV as well within the pharmaceutical industry. So he works in Novartis, he works with Surgifarm, but they are offering the training in their individual capacities, not representing the organizations. So when you go to pharmacovigilance, you'll be asking yourself, why pharmacovigilance? When you look at pharmacovigilance, I mentioned it as a subset of regulatory affairs, but is more focused on monitoring, detecting, reporting, investigating, and resolving any adverse events or untoward outcomes associated with use of any products across their life cycle. Whether you're talking about a medicine, a veterinary product, a medical device, A digital technology, there is a digital health vigilance in across the value chain. So you need to ask yourself, what kind of vigilance? And in this case, when we talk about pharmacovigilance, it's more on the medicine side, but there's opportunity to expand and see what across the value chain do we look to monitor. And the principles that are covered, I'll also talk about them, is about ensuring that once you do the pharmacovigilance and patient safety program, you understand the principles on what you can practice beyond just the understanding of what pharmacovigilance entails. It's knowing what do I need to do to serve as a QPPV? What do I need to do to serve as a pharmacovigilance specialist in an organization? What would be my day-to-day responsibility looking like? What system do I need to put in place to deliver on that mandate? And those are critical pieces. And then that would also be supported by case studies, case examples of what you need to look at. So when we talk about pharmacovigilance across the product life cycle, it starts from research and development. Because when you're doing your clinical research, when you've developed the new drug, the drug discovery has happened and you're trying the product in clinical use, either in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you have to ensure that it is safe. And if not safe, then you need to be monitoring any safety outcomes or safety events. And that is why the different phases have particular attributes that you're monitoring for. Either you're monitoring for safety to know the drug dosing level, you're monitoring for efficacy to see whether it's effective or not to the patient. And those will be covered in the training, because when you're looking at pharmacovigilance, it's not only the adverse events, but adverse events and also failure to non-responsiveness to therapy, because then it's not achieving its objective and therefore not quality in meeting the outcomes. So that is the key piece. During the clinical trials, what are the key considerations? What are the outcomes that you get with the patient population that you're dealing with? What happens when you're dealing with patients who are having different comorbidities? Normally, we don't recommend patients with comorbidities in clinical trials, but then those will now come in the clinical use interface. And you need to ensure that, assuming you're doing clinical trials and probably you involve female patients in that clinical study, and then in the process, they get to conceive. How do you monitor that? How do you report such kind of findings? Well, those are critical pieces. It might impact the development of the fetus, and therefore then that needs to be documented to assess whether it's safe or not safe in pregnancy. So by the virtue that R&D studies do not provide long-term safety studies and may not be conclusive, you have a pharmacovigilance role in monitoring during the study, but also monitoring post the clinical study, and ensuring that any outcomes that might arise as a result of this trial, whether it's successful or not, will be documented. And those are some of the key things that will be covered. When you look at the clinical use component, we understand that we have now in clinical use, it's been approved, it's registered, and patients are using it for treatment of diseases. It will get into different markets, diverse markets. So in those diverse markets, are we responding the same way, either based on our genomic sequencing, kind of demographics and whatever, and how is that impacting use? And we're dealing with real patients with real complications. It's not an ideal patient, because in clinical trials, we're looking at a patient with, if it's malaria, it's malaria. But you'll find David has malaria, has diabetes, and has HIV/AIDS. Those are 3 diseases with different medicines. What are the drug-drug interactions? What are the drug-food complications that might interaction that might arise that might impact use? Such kind of documented outcomes must be there. So risk of interaction, extensive pool of HCPs as well, because there's also a risk that doctors and healthcare professionals who are dealing with patients might be sensitized or desensitized from certain kind of features. So they assume maybe that is just a normal feature that you're presenting, but in another patient population, the physician might see it as a red flag, as a pointer that there has to be an issue that needs to be addressed. So how is that going to be looked into? So clinical use. Then post-use, we look at long-term safety concerns with the product, and that is either genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, and related complications that might arise after the use of the product long-term. Then we have developmental improvement for similar classes of drugs. Because of an observation that was made in this product, we can go to the subsequent levels and what kind of information is being collected there. And that will link to the conversation now. I would recommend read about real-world evidence and real-world data in terms of patient safety and pharmacovigilance, which is an emerging topic as well. We will also talk about it, some of the emerging trends in the course. In understanding pharmacovigilance principles will help healthcare professionals across domain to stay vigilant, promptly report, and drive interventions to prevent harm to patients. And if you look at our mission from the starting point, safe, effective, and quality healthcare products to improve patient treatment outcomes in care. and that is a key piece. So what are the modules like? Introduction to pharmacovigilance and patient safety, adverse effects, individual case safety reports, pharmacovigilance systems, pharmacovigilance methods and planning, aggregate safety reports, that is where we'll talk about periodic safety update reports, risk management plans, you're looking at development safety update reports and related. Then we have safety communication. How are you going to report signals, safety signals? How do you identify them? How do you detect and how do you consolidate and make the reporting? What are the timelines for reporting? Do you have a robust risk management system, and what does that risk management system look like? And that is where now we will talk about, for example, pharmacovigilance system master file, the risk management plans, and related. Then we have pharmacovigilance inspections, self-audits, and regulatory actions. In case of any untoward outcomes and you've done your inspections, you fail to comply in certain ways, how do you monitor to ensure that your systems are robust enough? But also in case of regulatory action, maybe a recall or whatever, you're recommended to do a communication to healthcare professionals. How do you handle them? Those will be looked into. Then career opportunities in pharmacovigilance and patient safety as the last module, just to point you to where you could be looking at probable opportunities. It's not only in industry, but across industry and beyond. So you need to be able to identify where those possibilities, and we'll be looking at that in one of the modules. Then we have training schedule, Thursday evenings. So area I talked about Wednesday, this is on Thursdays. 7:30 p.m. East African time. The course structure is the same: lectures, guest lectures, case studies, and networking dinner. And the guest lectures also are part of our industry discussion forums. So you can participate in those to get a glimpse of what's happening and whatever it is. The investment course, standard fee as it is, members $250, non-members $300, certification, PPB, and IFPMA. Now, just to point out, we are currently in the process of applying for accreditation across other geographies within the continent, and we're hoping that by the end of the year, we'll have expanded to a couple of countries in terms of getting accreditations. So that is a process that is underway to expand our reach. So that is for the pharmacovigilance and patient safety. And I'll take a pause here in case somebody has a question as well.
Thank you, David. I'll open the floor to any questions you may have. Please feel free to raise your hand. We'd also like to hear your voices. If possible, also your camera as well. And the links have actually been shared both for the RA course and the pharmacovigilance course. So for those of you who are interested, please feel free to join the cohort one. Cohort one for regulatory affairs, the classes are starting on January 29th. And that for pharmacovigilance, they are starting on February 6th. So any questions, please feel free to raise them. I'll give maybe 1 minute so I don't leave anyone out. You can also use the chat with the Q&A section. David, it looks like you did a very good job. All questions were answered. I think you may proceed. Just in case I've left anyone out, we can still take the questions at the end of the session. So don't worry. As the slides are updated.
Great. So the last course that we have at the moment is the pharmaceutical supply chain management. And our team of facilitators, we have Dr. Derek Mugambi, who is a supply chain expert. He's been working with Zipline and actually recently just made a transition to a Ecumenical Pharmaceutical Network. Then we have Samuel Kirui, who is a manager key accounts, joint medical stores in Uganda. Then we have Dr. Christine Irungu, supply chain lead for CHEB Kenya. Then we have Aston Nuagira, who is working with the Clinton Health Access Initiative, CHAI, in Uganda, supporting the government in their supply chain optimization process. So this is our faculty for the people we are working with. So why the supply chain management process? And this is a critical conversation that I would want to actually, I'll go through the whole of it and just leave it at that particular moment so that we have a clear conversation. I know we all have seen so many supply chain management courses and available wherever they are, which is a good piece. But one of the key things we kept asking ourselves, as much as we are within this domain, and there are so many other courses that are coming in, is what are the gaps in the market. And when we look at those gaps that are existing in the market, as if somebody innovates and develops a good product, the RA professional registers that product. The pharmacovigilance systems are robust enough to capture any untowards or adverse events that might happen in that product. Those are amazing. But unless the product is distributed into the market and actually the patient has access to it, there's no value of that medicine. The medicine has only value at the point when a patient can access it, a patient can use it, and therefore then it can elicit the therapeutic value in that patient. That is a critical piece. But across that value chain, there are key enabling determination that will determine at what point do we source for it, at what point do we intervene to ensure that it gets to the person who needs it. And to a greater level, and most of there is now the distinguishing factor behind what you look at to how we look at thinking about supply chain and what most of programs that I've interacted with have been. They look at pharmaceutical supply chain from a government donor-driven programs, but we look at it from a business imperative. Assume you're managing your own community pharmacy or you're managing a hospital as the private sector player. What are the key considerations that you need to put into place? What are your data points that will show you these are the levels of a product that I need? What are the prescribing patterns for your physicians? Because if you don't understand their prescribing patterns, most of the times you'll have somebody who is managing your pharmacy in that hospital or somebody you live in your community pharmacy to manage it. And every other time, probably, let's say, for example, the doctor prescribes with the brand name. And they might not correlate the brand name to the generic name, and maybe it facilitates to switch of the medicines. What would happen is your products are in stock and therefore expiring on your shelves, but then they're not getting to the patients who need them. And instead, out of stock is the common standard, and therefore patients are going to alternative premises to get the same product. How do you close for such kind of gaps? And from a pharmaceutical value chain, from an industry perspective, having your products and mapping your value distribution channel is a critical piece. And when we look at that, we look at it from the production level, assuming you get to work for an industry, because you will get orders from clients if you're working in a pharmaceutical company. When the orders come, they expect orders within a particular lead time. And that turnaround time has to be met. And the only way it will be met is because you focused it appropriately and you know what would be the values and the levels of the product that are needed at a particular time. And therefore, the raw materials that were needed for manufacturing have already been in place. The packaging material, the excipients that are needed are stocked and optimally in store for the production activities to take effect. Maybe at times it is because there are certain clients that might need small kind of buffer stocks. Do you have any stocks that are available in your warehouse? Or how do you ensure that you manage and have a contingency plan but also reduce risk of expiries? Do you have an arrangement with the people within your chain, assuming I'm working for a pharmaceutical company and I have different distributors that I'm supplying? Can I structure an arrangement where they can move stock between them? I have distributor A, B, C, and D, and therefore at times there's a customer that is being served by distributor C, and C is out of stock. Can I coordinate the distribution so that I can get the product from distributor A to distributor C so that they can serve the customer need? You might look at it as out of scope because it's at the distributor level, but that sale, if it doesn't happen, that distributor might lose that business. And if they lose that business, there's a chance it might go to one of your other distributors, but there's also a chance the patient might be switched to an alternative product. And if they switch to the alternative product, how do you have access to your market still? Because you look at it now from the business fundamentals of the supply chain operation that you are coordinating. And you need to look at it from a business lens and seeing how do I map my value chain? What are the key levers of control and drivers of change that I need to take advantage of and deliver that value? So those are some of the imperatives that we're trying to bring into our course to ensure that we are not only training you on the principles. I believe quantification is a standard, forecasting is a standard, supply planning is a standard. But the key levers and the key context around a private business imperative is critical to understand, because that is the driver of sustainability for your pharmacy, for your hospital, or for the distributorship, or even the manufacturing company that you are going to work with as a pharmaceutical company. And you need to have those insights and factors at the tip of your finger so that you're able to make the right decision when it's necessary to make those right decisions. At the SPP level, when you've now developed the product, is already in place. This can be you in a wholesaler, manufacturing, steel level, whatever. You have to coordinate orders, forecast, quantify, coordinate your orders and delivery products to your end customers where they need to be. Coordinate your supply chain information flow. And when you talk about information flow, it's information, but also the resourcing that are coming in and all that. Reverse logistics and rerouting of your products where necessary. When we're talking about shifting from one stock to another, kind of sharing arrangement. And reverse logistics is an important thing. And when you look at currently conversations around climate change, environmental conservation, and related, and even pharmaceutical waste management, there's a clear need to ensure that there's a robust pharmaceutical value chain around supply chain management for waste management. So how do you understand that? And then client relationship management and even coordination of refunds. You might not be the person processing the money, but somebody has to process that payment. And it's dependent on the information that you've relayed. And if you manage the relationship well with your clients as a supply chain professional, you are enabling the finance function to work. You're managing the business development and the marketing teams to function. Because if the marketing person says, we are going to deliver in a month, it is a fact. It is not a lie to that particular client. And therefore, the customer can bank on your reliability. And that is critical. So you are all in supply chain managing information flow, resource flow, I would say, information, finances, and products across downstream and upstream to serve key needs of stakeholders and players within the value chain. So in the course, what are the key things that we look at in our modules? We have the introduction to pharmaceutical supply chain. We have product selection in the different domain and the matrix that you are working on. Demand and supply planning, forecasting and quantification, procurement, warehousing and inventory management, logistics management, product use, so that you know where is it being used and how is it being used. Resource management, financial, personnel, IT, and that is looking at what information do you have and how are you making the best use of those resources. Monitoring and evaluation of the supply chain management systems, quality management systems so that you have a proper framework that is guiding your work. And most importantly, leadership in pharmaceutical supply chain management, because you have to take ownership and lead that conversation. And the essence of that module specifically is to show that to exemplify the need for pharmaceutical supply chain professionals to move from a support function to a core function. The business only makes money when your products are distributed and actually available for use by patients. But if you leave the supply chain function as a back burner support function, then whatever gaps are in the market will never be addressed because you're taking a back seat. And that is where we need to see how do we make supply chain be an integral role in all the companies that we're working with and give them the power and the authority to be able to make the right decision and flex their muscle to deliver value for the company, for the clients, and for the patients who are counting on the medicines being available where they need them. For the supply chain, the lectures are on Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. East African time for 3 months. And the first lecture will be starting mid-February. The course structure is the same: lectures, guest lectures, case studies, and networking dinner. Investment, same amount, and certification is still the same: Pharmacy and Poisons Board and the International Pharmaceutical Federation. And with that, I've come to the end of my slides, so I'll get it to the Q&A, then we can come towards the end of this session.
Thank you so much, David. You did a great job taking us through the courses. So I'll open the floor to any questions. You can raise your hand. I'll be able to unmute you. Or you can just use the chat. Please feel free. I like that you're also very few because that can make it very intimate. So don't shy away from speaking up. Should you have any clarifications, concerns, maybe something was covered that you felt needs to be explained again, we are happy to do that. Anyone? Are there any questions that usually come up to your mind when you see our posters on your WhatsApp because I know you see a lot of now is the time to answer, to ask them. Right, Farida has a question, David.
Yes, thank you.
She asks, go ahead.
Thank you. So I see the question is about the benefits of membership. And the benefits of membership, we already talked about it. For these courses that we're offering, you do them at discounted rates. You'll see each of them, there's a difference of $50 for each of the courses that you're taking. So you do the courses at a discounted rate. You have access to professional networks. And one of the key things that I mentioned is we're having communities of practice where you are able to engage and collaboratively engage with people working within the domain, where it can be where you are working now or in a sector or field or subsector that you are interested in learning more about as you figure out your career transition journey. So we have a couple of communities of practice where you can engage and work on with people. Two, the third thing is that we are now currently building a kind of project pool where we are sourcing for projects and whatever is happening, and even facilitating referral to opportunities. So if those come in, then it's through the membership that we flag them. And therefore, then you're able to either contribute to projects that we're doing in-house or support us in executing external projects wherever you are. And then the last piece in thought leadership and industry leadership opportunities, when we have these guest lectures, industry discussion forums, you are the first go-to people in terms of facilitating those industry forums. It helps you build your professional brand in the domain where you're practicing, but it also shapes conversations around where your interests are and helps you grow in your professional career and even in your public speaking skills for those who are interested in building on those capabilities. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Thank you, David. Maybe Farida can. All right. Thanks for
Okay, thank you.
confirming. Right. Any other questions? We have to check the hour. Right. Danish, I'm allowing your mic. You should be able to unmute your end. Go ahead.
Yes, Lucy. Thanks. So, thanks, David, for the wonderful presentation. So, in addition to what David has mentioned about the benefits of being a member of APN, also whenever we have these events, we always offer our members discounted rates for the dinners, etc. So, as you can see, then there's a wide range of benefits of being a member. Even whenever we hear of opportunities, the first people we reach are our members. So we encourage you all to join and be members of our APN. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danish. Anyone else with any questions? Before we close it off, I see we are already 2 minutes past the hour. I don't want to leave anyone with any unanswered questions. Right. So if there are no questions, I'd like to come to the close of the session. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope that this session will enable you to make an informed decision regarding your next career path or career upskilling. And you will consider us as a trusted institution to take the programs, the trainings with us. And maybe I can give David something to say before I finally close it off.
No, nothing really. For me, what I would just encourage, in case you have any questions, please reach out, and we look forward to working in this journey with you in your professional development and make pharmacy and strengthen pharmaceutical systems better in the continent of Africa. Thank you and have a good one.
Thank you so much, David. I couldn't have put it any better. And I think with that, we come to the end of the session. I wish you all a lovely evening. And please remember to subscribe to the session on the PPB channel because it was really updated so that you may be able to get your points. Yes, right. Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye.